Greetings and welcome to Remedy Radio, the show that communicates solutions, helping you find, learn, and eventually teach remedies for life, love, liberty, and the achievement of both happiness and satisfaction for you and your loved ones. Removing your uncertainty and inspiring your curiosity.
Episode 2 of Remedy Radio is entitled Heal Thyself. Let food be thy medicine.
Welcome to Remedy Radio, where communicating solutions is what we do here. Thank you again for joining us. I've got two of my amazingly talented colleagues in here, Robert Christie and Paul Verge. Today's topic of conversation is going to be one that is everywhere, and you hear it everywhere, and that's health. So, what a massive topic of conversation. Where do we start is the question.
Well, one aspect of health is that you are what you eat, so...
Very good concept.
But maybe we should define health and what it really means in terms of well-being, because you are a human being. So when someone talks about your well-being, they're implying that you don't want to be at dis-ease.
Right.
So you want to feel well.
Huh.
And really, if we're talking about health, we're probably talking more about physical health than emotional or mental health, although I think the three are related.
Right.
So personally, I think it's about food. It's about what we put in our bodies. But
So then another question would be, what are we made of? What is the most common element in our bodies? And arguably it would be water, right?
Yeah.
So what type of water are you drinking is a question that often we overlook. And we have just recently been investigating that question and realized that some of the stuff that we're putting in our body, which is the water that we're drinking, has a huge impact on who we are. Right?
Absolutely.
it's true.
Yeah.
So
Well,
filters.
What's that?
I mean, filters, right?
What we are.
Yeah.
Well, essentially, yeah. So the cleaner the stuff we can put in it, the better for the filter. Easier on the filter.
So yeah, on today's show, I guess we want to kind of analyze this machine that houses our selves, and how it operates, how it runs, what kind of fuel we're putting in it, and what we can do to maximize how well our body works and prolong any of the ill effects that come along with living in our environment and aging and stuff. So
Absolutely. And so, well, I guess the most important parts of health. I guess there's three aspects of health, because there's three aspects to us. I guess there's the body, mind, and spirit. And any one of those things is out of balance. So health to me is a sort of or well-being is like a balance. And so depending on the balance of any of those three things would determine your health.
what happens when those things go out of balance?
Well, then disease happens. And so there's a number of, the symptoms. So we get symptoms, really. Symptoms are what happen. And so those are signals that something is out of balance. So it's trying to figure what that is.
And so if I treat the symptoms, do I get better?
The illusion of betterness, yes.
Right. The body's telling you something. It's saying, hey, look, wake up. There's something wrong. You need to check yourself. You need to check all the aspects of everything, right? And see what you can do to fix it.
So finding out if you're deficient in something or you have too much of another thing, and if that's creating an imbalance, then fixing that imbalance might just naturally heal the condition.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest problem is that it's actually getting that information, because you can't actually get that information. Nobody really knows. If you notice that most doctors, they do a thing called practice, and you have patients while they practice on you, and so they don't really know. And basically, the way their practice, what their practice has been turned into, is a diagnostic practice. And so you go in there and you have some sort of symptom, which is usually the byproduct, the symptom of a toxic world already and imbalances. And then you go into a doctor and they diagnose whatever the symptom is, and they diagnose it with more chemicals. So they give you drugs, whatever it is. They say, we think you got this, try this for a little while, see what happens to the symptoms, right? So when you get that, you get something that's called all the chemicals, the drugs, whatever the doctors give you, they come with things called side effects. Um, and side effects is one of those tricky little things that they do with nomenclature to get us to think that the side effect is not something that's like part of the drug. It's something that's over here on the side, which, like maybe it's you're trying to cure high blood pressure, and but there's nausea and puking blood is a side effect. But they're all effects of the drug. Maybe it gets rid of the high blood pressure, but you might get puking blood and all that other crazy stuff along with it, right? So they're not separate from each other. It's all part of getting more chemicals.
And if anything, it's like they're put over to the side, but if you picture your health as a teeter-totter, something that's over on the side is actually going to create that imbalance or worsen the imbalance that's causing the illness in the first place. Absolutely. So I would ask you, Adam, do you think it's more profitable to treat the symptoms or the root causes?
Well, it's obviously more profitable not to treat the root causes, to basically be ignorant to, the basically curing what it is that's causing the ailment. So if if your body is telling you something and you have a symptom and you're being diagnosed, there's obviously one of three things, right, which are either the lack of nutrients that you're taking in, either the toxicity or the environment that you're in, right? We are all filters and we all have to be cleaned out every once in a while. So there's maintenance that involves this little spacesuit, specifically in the environment that we're in, right? So, if you go with that analogy, it's no different than changing the oil in your car. People spend more money on their vehicles than they do on themselves. You say, okay, well, oh my God, that's a $600 blender? How do you justify that? Well, how do you justify spending, $80,000 on a vehicle? You know what I mean? What's
worth more, your life or your car?
Exactly. So,
well, my car's got airbags all around it.
It protects me.
I think, if anything, it ties in with what we talked about in our last episode, which was the idea in communication that we give away our power and defer responsibility. And in that sense, in the nanny state that we live in, especially with the medical industrial complex, we're kind of encouraged to not look into our own health, not to be self-health responsible in a sense, right, because there's so many people waiting to make money off of our ignorance, our own self-ignorance about our health. So whether it's misinformation given to us about our diets, which cause us to overconsume, meats and cheeses and other products that in minimal amounts aren't very health destructive, although that's arguable, but in larger amounts can be quite health restrictive. Right? Yeah. We're encouraged to consume, cheaper products that are less nutritious than, healthy, good vegetables, which are rich in nutrients. And there's a whole play with this whole organic versus natural, and trying to create almost like an elite market versus the traditional market, and price out the healthy food so that regular poor people can't get access to it as easily as someone who's more well off. And that's, if anything, in our society, we should all have equal access to food, first and foremost. So it's an educational component and then also a nutritional component. Whereas if we're putting in garbage, we're mostly going to get garbage back out. So in that sense, a lot of our diseases and illnesses can be prevented, not so much by, eating only healthy all the time, but preventing yourself from eating all the unhealthy toxins that are so rich in so many of the processed foods. If you just avoid those, then you're lowering the amount of toxicity that you're putting into your body in the first place, and then you can have an easier time balancing. Where you want to like strictly get into the super healthy food is either preventative maintenance, you know what I mean, or corrective maintenance for whatever imbalance is manifested. So maybe we can talk about some of these kinds of immune boosting things when we come back.
Well, first, I'd like to caution everybody before that healthy eating is a disorder. They've actually figured
It's a mental disorder.
Yeah,
Yeah,
healthy eating disorder. So be careful
right.
when it comes to eating healthy.
Yeah. So we're gonna
Little disclaimer.
we'll send you the link. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk a little bit more about health and some more of the interesting topics that go along with it. So stick around. We'll be back in just a second. Welcome back, folks. Thanks for sticking around with us here on Remedy Radio, where communicating solutions is what we do. I have Paul here and Rob that we were talking a little bit about preventative maintenance, actually, and what that means and what a health orientated concept is and how you can apply that to your life and what changes you can see in your life. Do you wake up in the morning groggy, or do you wake up in the morning clear-minded? That's a question you can ask yourself.
So a question I'd like to ask is, for people who are interested in forming positive habits, what kind of, like, because you guys are two of the healthiest eaters that I know. I can far and away say that you guys eat healthier than I do, like, without a doubt. And it's reflected in the quality of your, the way your body's working, your skin, the way you carry yourself. So what habits do you have in terms of what you consume in a day that you feel are vital components to your nutritious well-being? Like green smoothies, like tell me about what.
Rob's the man on this one.
Well, for me, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that people who are grossly overweight, obese, whatever, are actually starving to death. And one of the things about food is that food has become an elite kind of a thing, right? And they've separated people by what you can afford. And basically all the money that I make or whatever, anything that I come goes into our food for me feeding my family, and it's always organic, like the best whatever.
But let me ask you something. What does feeding or starving yourself mean? What does that mean?
You mean malnourished? Like
yeah. Well, I was going to get to there's a lack of nutrients. So people, because of what they can afford, people think that the more they consume is the better. That's why there's all you can eat places, right? And that's why they do so well, because all I got's $10. So if I got $10, I'm going to go to an all you can eat place and dump and get as much as I can. But the problem with that, there's no nutrients. All the food's cooked to death. It's probably whatever. I don't know what the food is, but
quantity versus quality.
Absolutely. So what we've realized is that you can have a few key foods that are just really nutrient dense, and that's what you need. Your body needs nutrients to run, and the other stuff that everybody talks about, the carbos and the fats and the proteins and all that stuff, that's because that's what's in most of the food you're eating. There's no nutrients. Nobody talks about the nutrients. You get the right nutrients, you get the right minerals, your body will function the way it needs to, and it'll dump all the stuff it doesn't need. So what we've come to realize is that really it's just about they're getting the right nutrients, and everybody's different. So you have to do for yourself. It's all trial and error, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what works for me may not work for you. It may work better for you. Who knows? And so basically, it's
you do have to do some experimenting on yourself to find out not only what you like, but what your body likes as well. Because some people are going to have allergies, but those allergies are really symptoms of some other thing that's not working properly, and it's something usually that you can fix, which most people don't realize. Another aspect, I think, of health that is really, really grossly misunderstood is the immune system, and how foods and nutrients help contribute to powering the immune system, and just how powerful the immune system is at fighting off all these illnesses that we get, and how underrated it is, and how really misunderstood. Like, we can get into AIDS and HIV and all that stuff, but really nobody dies. They die of the disease that they get, but it's really everyone's dying of immune failure because the immune system would otherwise fight off pretty much every disease that we could get, right?
Well, I can tell you an example of knowing. You can tell how powerful it is by how powerful the powers that be will go to getting it so that your immune system won't work. And the first thing they'll do, because what builds an immune system is breast milk. And so what they'll do, especially in developing nations, is get a mother that would naturally be giving the child its milk, her milk, some sort of formula. So the first thing they do is get the kids off what builds their immune system and give them something that they can't even get an immune system. And so
There's information in the milk, right? There's information of the external environment that the mother has been subjected
everything
to.
that mother's gone through is
yep.
in that milk.
Right.
Yeah.
So all the things that she's become immune to, she's actually passing that on to the baby. So it's an
Right.
essential component of infanthood that is overlooked because of lack of education and people using persuasive rhetoric to convince someone here's a cheaper, quote unquote, better alternative. And if you don't know that your breast milk is essential, you're going to be like, okay, well, no problem then. And then when that baby or becomes a child and later develops disease, there's a disconnect between that awareness of understanding the root where those symptoms would have been drawn out of and how to treat it at that point.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about breast milk as one stage, what would you say as the child progresses? What are more important things? Like, should you be vaccinating your children to prevent diseases? Should you be feeding them, complex, high nutrient foods right at the beginning, or do you have to ease them up to it? Or
Well,
Water's huge.
water's a big deal. And yeah, I mean, food. The kids kind of if you let them do it themselves, they'll figure that stuff out. So you let them try things, right? But yeah, I mean, you start off with mushy bananas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a banana. I kind of my perspective was that you feed them according to how many teeth they have.
Okay.
That was my thing. I was like, well, they don't have any teeth yet, so what, they gonna chew on a steak? I mean, we don't eat meat anyway, but like I saw people doing that, and I saw people that give their little kids, Cokes and stuff, and I'm like, that, it's poison. What are you doing? And
Yeah, like a fast food burger, and they're forcing their kid to eat the fast food burger, and you're like, oh my God, is this for real?
yeah,
Well,
Is this
because what's the
happening right
lasting
now?
effect that's going to have? Because I find with my son that his resistance to a lot of the healthier foods now is because of the building up of all these chemicals that he's eaten, I'm sure, in the past, like MSG and aspartame and all these things, which, to my knowledge, they alter your taste buds' perceptions. So that
Yep.
the more MSG or aspartame you've consumed, the worse tasting vegetables appear to be to the brain because the signals aren't quite getting through properly. And you have to kind of like decondition or uncondition yourself from that.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what you're working against. The more, every time you like take your kid out for a Happy Meal, or you give them a bag of Doritos because there's a nice package on the outside, each one of those little snacks is a conditioning mechanism for the brain. Same thing with giving sugar. That's why the kids always love seeing the grandparents, because the grandparents are like, here's some sugar, and that creates this positive association in the brain, like chemically, like an addictive association. And each time you reward the child like that reward, it's one more thing that you have to undo in terms of getting them back on a healthy habit cycle. So I'm guessing then you don't give your kids little handy snacks and jujubes and all these things, gummy
No.
bear stuff with the nice packaging. And
Occasionally they get the organic gummy bears, which are like healthy.
made from real sugar as opposed
Yeah.
to.
Well, yeah, healthy in quotation marks. Yeah, that stuff's all with a grain of salt. That's the big one of the big problems with.
But they've never had a Happy Meal.
Well, no, yeah, no, they don't want one. We don't lie about what that is, right? So they know what that is. I mean, my son's eating chicken, but I
Yeah.
mean, chicken's like so innocuous, it's like, everything tastes like chicken, and it's because it doesn't taste like anything. So he's like, oh yeah, chicken's great, and you're like, well.
In his mind, but
the sauce. He was like, well, it was the sauce. It was barbecue sauce. It's pretty tasty.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
See, the chicken doesn't
Yeah, it's
taste
the
like anything.
spice that tastes good. The vegetarian thing that tastes good, not the actual
Yeah.
flesh.
So maybe we could get into that then. I know we've got a short amount of time on this segment left, but the idea of vegetarianism, because I've gone back and forth, and I consciously understand the health benefits of not consuming meat or meat products, and yet I find myself with that conditioned programming that's taking me back every so often and being like, oh, it's only a little chicken, it's not a big deal. And you feel like you want to be resisting this urge to eat any of this stuff that you know is bad for you, and yet the chemical programming is so powerful. The habits that have been programmed are so powerful that it can cause you almost to overwhelm your rational mind. It's just weird. Maybe you guys don't suffer from this.
Well, I was just going to say that falls into addictions.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other ball game, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think we just.
So if I was addicted to KFC or something, then what?
Well, no, that's the chemicals, right? They got MSG and all that stuff.
Addiction.
So your body's like, yeah, give me more of that stuff. Right?
You wake up at 3 a.m. in cold meat sweats, and you're like craving it day and night, and you're like, you can see the Colonel's wee beady eyes, and he's looking right into your soul.
Your body's going through toxic overload, actually. It's like, oh, get me out of here.
So if you do a sweat lodge and you see 11 herbs and spices coming out of your pores,
so that would fall under the toxicity branch of it all. You being what you are, what you eat. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, talk a little bit more about health and how it involves you, and what are some of the things you can do to change things. We'll be back. Thanks for sticking around. All right, thanks for coming back on Remedy Radio, where communicating solutions is what we do, and today we're talking about health, a very broad topic. But nonetheless, we are talking about some important information that we believe you should know about. And that falls into what we had left off with, which...
Nummy num-nums. What are you putting in your body?
What are you putting in your body?
Drink-wise?
Is it toxic? Ask yourself that.
Is it
really,
nutritious?
really. If you can't understand the ingredient, it's probably...
not worth putting in your body?
Worth investigating. How's that?
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? This guy's the one that investigates most of all the food that he puts in his body.
You actually read the labels, right?
Right. It's a new concept in life.
Yeah. The labels are interesting, but they're getting more deceiving, right? So the key now is to just try to stay away with foods that have labels.
Yeah.
That where you can't pronounce something, or it says something like spices.
Yeah. Or you just want it just to say almonds, and that's it. Or raisins, or whatever it is.
Bananas, chocolate, and hemp nut.
Yeah.
Whatever, just
very
simple ingredients.
Yeah.
Very simple ingredients. But yeah, keep it whole, keep it natural, right? The simpler, I've found the simpler your diet is, the easier. It's like in everything in life, just the simpler, right? It's easier on your body.
So if I buy something then and it says natural on it, does that mean it's organic?
If it says natural, no.
What's
now,
the difference? You say if I'm an uninformed person who doesn't know natural from organic, I don't know vegan from vegetarian, like, can you explain some of these terms to me?
Well, ideally, organic means that it's grown in a non-violent way. That's what we're hoping for, right? That it's sustaining its environment, and it's good to the soil, it's good for us. That's the idea.
What about pesticides?
No pesticides, no chemical fertilizers, none of that stuff.
What about genetically modifying?
No, none of that.
So there's no such thing as GMO organic?
There's not supposed to be.
Okay.
So as far as I know, that's where we're at. But that's all changing as all the giant food conglomerations buy up all the organic food. So now there's a couple of interesting diagrams that people have done on the showing who owns what now in all the processed organic food industry and all the fresh food. So the more that this economic system continues, the more things get consolidated. We saw this latest banking thing, and the only thing that really happened out of that was people got looted, and a few more banks got.
A few more billionaires resulted.
Right, banks got more consolidated. The power just got more consolidated, right? And everybody's now in fear. Yeah, because they're just trying to pay the bills.
Yeah, and you're talking about simplicity of things and how to eat simple things and do simple things to be able to get return on your investment, right? if you're talking about investing in yourself, in the food that you're investing in yourself, why not invest in somebody who takes their time to grow the food that they're feeding you, right? Like there's a saying, what kind of man can't grow his own food? You know, it's kind of like a country saying, right? Where it's like, you know, it's true. You look around you, and how many people do have a relationship with their food in terms of whether or not they're growing them, right? And the people who do understand that there is a relationship that you know have with the food, and that there are places like farmers markets, for example, that people understand the relationships that they do, and that they could transfer that relationship to you because you're not being able to participate in it, but you know,
So knowing where your food comes from.
exactly investing in that, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. We've been going to the farmers market now for, I think they've had them for about 5 years
Yeah.
now, steady here, and we've been going since the beginning, and we know all the farmers, you know, and it's wonderful. I love knowing where my food comes from, and they're all like, "Yeah, come stay at our farm," you know, because they all live in the interior here,
Yeah.
so where most of the growing's done and all over the place. And they're like, "Yeah, come stay, you know, spend a few weeks." You know, we're actually looking at going. You know, we could spend this whole summer at people's farms.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, putting
If we don't have our own.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about putting human energy into food, whether it's from the planting seeds, the tilling of the crops, the sowing of everything, and ultimately, you know, taking it out of the ground and putting it somewhere, or even processing it to eat it. It's doing it with human hands, human love, human energy, as opposed to a machine just going around coldly picking everything up and slicing it off and wrapping it in plastic and putting a UPC label on it. That, and you know, not everyone has to believe in the vibrational aspect of reality, but in terms of like putting that vibration of care into the food and having it come back to the people who eat it, as opposed to the cold, dead, lifeless, non-nutritious processing dynamic, which result, you know, you are what you eat. If you're eating dead things, you're going to be getting to the end of your life quicker than if you're eating fresh, living, high enzyme, high nutrient foods. It's really that simple.
Yep.
Right? All the people who are the oldest living people on Earth today, and I mean oldest and living, like still functional, you know, like 110-year-olds who can still walk and stuff. The one thing you'll find in common is that they had an abundance of healthy food that they ate.
Sure. Yeah.
Clean
course.
water.
Clean water.
Clean water, good
Huge.
food.
Water's huge. There's this place called Find a Spring, by the way. I want to plug this. That you should definitely check out and find out where your local spring is, and hit it up. You know, get some glass jars like the old apple cider.
Are you talking about hot springs or?
No, I'm talking about springs that allow you to drink from it. So on findaspring.com,
Yeah.
right? They test these springs. You know, do your own research, obviously, but you know, we have a local spring that we go to all the time, and it's, you know, the best water.
It's on there.
It's clean. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank Daniel Vitalis, who actually provides that service.
Yeah,
we were actually
totally.
listening to him and David Wolf talking earlier about water,
We're gonna get them on the show.
and I you know,
Hopefully.
it goes the same thing like we were just talking about food. The
Yeah.
food, it all comes down to quality, right? David was saying, you know, it's better to have 2 glasses of, you know, the best spring water you can have than having, you know,
8 cups of tap water with chlorine
Exactly.
and possibly fluoride in it.
Right. It's like having one organic red pepper to a bag full of non-organic ones. They're just like, it's just like crappy water. Actually, probably
It's
the water
filler.
might be, well, I guess the water wouldn't be any good in there either.
Yeah.
Again, it comes back to knowing what you're consuming and knowing where it comes from. If
Yeah.
we're going to fill up at a spring every 4 days, you know, someone could look at it as an inconvenience, and you know, it takes time, and you know, you could just, you know, your tap's there, you pay for the water, why not drink it? Well, the difference is the quality of life. What value do you put on the quality of your life? If it takes you an hour or 2 hours in a week, but the water that you drink is chlorine free and fluoride free, and the end result is a sharper, clearer perspective, you know, you're not as groggy, you're more energetic. Well, that's almost incalculable in terms of the value to your life that it adds.
Mhm.
And so it's the same thing with organic food, and that you don't really know what you're missing until you've got it,
Mm.
and you realize what a difference in the quality of life that you could be living, because the human body is so amazing. It will adapt to eating completely garbage food.
Yeah.
It will adapt to living in a completely garbage environment and take in what bare nutrients it can find, and it will allow you to live. But eventually, that the strength of that immune system is going to wear down. It's going to break down without the proper care and fuel.
Mm-hmm.
So being aware of that and educating yourself on it and passing that education on to your friends and children and neighbors and everything, because imagine a world where we're all growing our own private gardens and sharing what we grow with our neighbors who share with us what they grow. And so everyone's got this whole bountiful, almost like a friendly competition, like who's got the nicest tomatoes this year, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's been like that for more in the history of humanity than now, you know. I think now more than ever is the time in history where people have been disconnected from the growing, right?
Well, there's
and the sharing.
Yeah, there's a big thing in the New Age movement, whatever, called indigo children.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they say about indigo children is that they can survive on all this crappy food. Now, I don't know if that's to get people to just be okay with it, be like, oh yeah, my kid's going to be great on this crappy food, or you know, I just was thinking about it. I'm like, that's kind of a weird.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I've heard of the concept of indigo children. The thing is like that's applying a generalized standard then to a whole host of things and not taking into account the vast differences that we all have in terms of, you know, we have different blood types, we have different learning styles, our bodies process food differently, right? You could be allergic to something that I'm not. I could have a higher alcohol tolerance, whatever it is. Our bodies, they're built the same, like all cars are the same, but there's different makes and models.
No, I recognize that. I'm just wondering about the message. What kind of message are you trying to send when you're saying, oh yeah, the cars will be able to run on sugar in the gasoline?
Yeah, I think it's
really?
it's in not as enlightened message as people might think, because it's the same thing as knowing someone who's a genius and yet they eat at McDonald's every day. You have to kind of question, well, they might be really intelligent, but how wise are they? Mm-hmm. I think there's a huge difference between, you know, straight up intellectual understanding or knowledge and the wisdom of being grounded to something that's like, you don't even have to analyze it to make sure it's true. You can feel its truth. And that might sound flaky to some people, but it's like, it's one of those things where as sure as you know that there's gravity.
Well, drink spring water for a while and then drink tap water. You can taste it.
Develop a passion for truth seeking. So stick around. We'll be back. We're just going to take a quick break, and thank you very much for supporting and listening in. Thanks, and welcome back to Remedy Radio, where communicating solutions is what we do. We're having a really interesting episode talking about health and some of the more finer details of health and how it affects everyone. You're not immune to health issues, okay? You are affected by it, whether it's a close friend that's affected by it or whether it's, you know, and being empowered with a suitcase full of tools to arm your friends with in terms of knowing what to do to improve your health and to maximize the potential of who you are is important. So be passionate and share the information, share what you heard today with somebody that you know, and empower them. So,
but only after you look it up for yourself.
Absolutely, of course, without a doubt.
Don't believe anything he says.
Don't believe anything.
Or him.
Research it for yourself.
We're all giving our subjective opinions, but a lot of it's based on our own experiences. And if anything, we all do like to kind of guinea pig experiment on ourselves so that we can speak from experience rather than just speculation. Mm-hmm. So in terms of experience, I was kind of unaware until talking with you guys about the value of, you know, minerals. Like I used to take a lot of vitamin supplements thinking that I was doing good to my body and not knowing that I would basically be peeing most of it out, right? Mm-hmm. Because it was like dead vitamins and dead minerals. So can you explain the difference between living and dead vitamins and minerals and this whole concept of enzymes, which I think people might be unfamiliar with?
Sure. Well, I know, like I just learned about a week ago the difference between vitamin B12s. The one that's in mostly everything is called cyanocobalamin, I believe is what it's called. Mm-hmm. And that's basically like cyanide, and it's toxic to us. And it's in everything that has that. That's in that, and that is because it's the cheap kind. And apparently that's about $1,500 a kilogram, where the good kind of vitamin B12, which the name escapes me at the time right now, but is about $5,000 a kilogram. So, and it's like that with, there's a number of vitamins that are like that. So so it makes it really prohibitive to give people. I know that like there's vitamin D2, vitamin D3. The vitamin D2 is what's in everything that's fortified, but that's the one that your body can't use.
So like in milk and all these
Yeah.
things where it's like vitamin D.
Right. Same with calcium. There's a big thing about calcium, but it's either
I heard you can't metabolize calcium without magnesium, like
Well, that-
twice as much magnesium.
Yeah.
So if your milk, if it's like fortified with calcium, but no magnesium, then
absolutely
it's worthless.
Well, and the calcium that they do use is like chalk. It's either chalk or oyster shells or something, which your body doesn't
Absorb.
use. It doesn't absorb that. So, and then another thing that I've learned was that magnesium will actually turn into calcium if your body needs it. And this is one of the things that when you get into understanding minerals and metals and all these things, because a lot of these things are forms of metals and forms of minerals and whatever. And minerals, when you get down to their smallest structure, is light.
Mhm.
So it's basically light, and it's one of the things I wanted to touch on, because what happens is what I believe is going on, what I think is going on, is that because of all the chemicals in our world, our body gets filled with chemicals. And so the reason we can only use 10% of our brain, or whatever they say, is because your brain has got all these pathways in it. And those pathways get filled with chemicals instead of the minerals that are supposed to. There's like keys, they're little doors, and there's keys, and the keys are the minerals, which is light. And so they go in and boom, they shed a little light onto the situation.
Whereas the chemicals are like gum in the locks.
Exactly, the chemical gums up the lock. So what we need to do is do what's necessary to get those chemicals, all the toxins, out of those pathways,
Out of your body.
out of your body, and then put the proper ones in there. And because of our agriculture, which is NPK agriculture, which is basically nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, there's a whole range, a full spectrum of minerals and nutrients that's not in our food anymore. So once we get those nutrients back and we can detoxify ourselves of the stuff that's in there, then we start to open up
Those pathways,
those
which
pathways,
in
our
turn,
potential.
yeah, improves our clarity and everything. So maybe you can talk about enzymes, Adam, or if you
Well,
want us to touch on
yeah,
that.
I just wanted to jump in on that and say that also to keep in mind that any type of food that you're eating, specifically nuts or seeds, some types of seeds, should be soaked, because what ends up happening is the seed has around it what's an anti-enzyme. It's a natural preservative that's found on nuts, right? And it helps protect it against mold and mildew and all the external environment that has to throw to it. So if you don't soak this food before you consume it, nuts,
in their raw form.
in their raw form, what basically happens is you start ingesting these natural preservatives, right? And just because they're natural doesn't necessarily mean it's not hard for your body to digest, or it doesn't, you're gonna feel it, right? And there's a lot of natural toxins, if that makes any sense, in those preservatives, right? So your body has a very hard time shedding itself of these toxins, right? If it's not going through a stage. So soaking is very important.
Right. Well, because a lot of those seeds and nuts and things are designed so that whatever's eating it will actually defecate it out somewhere down the road, and
Right.
thus it will grow and reproduce itself. So that's why it's part of why it's good.
Yeah, like nature or whatever creative intelligence designed everything, kind of put in these helpful, beneficial things that, if they're misunderstood, can appear non-beneficial. But even the annoying things, still they serve a purpose or a function. It's just a matter of understanding that function and seeing whether you need to go with it or to go around it. So we were going to touch on the idea of enzymes and breaking down food, because I think a lot of people don't realize if you just like take a bite and swallow it without chewing it and breaking it down, without letting the enzymes attack it, and then you also don't have the proper enzymes both in the food and in your body to break down that food, essentially it will treat that food like a foreign invader. So maybe you could talk about that.
Well, that's basically the theory around meat eating. Animal who regularly consumes meat will have a shorter digestive system than a vegetarian animal, right? And that goes with the toxicity of meat. If you eat enough meat, your state will be your body will be in a state of acidosis, thereby allowing disease to occur. Right, the harder the body has to work to break down food, the less time it has to maintain itself. Right, and so if you've got a smoothie, for example, or a machine that does a lot of work for you, your digestive system barely has to work in order to break down and assimilate some of those natural live enzymes.
And so you absorb more of the nutrients because it doesn't have to waste them in powering the digestive process.
Exactly.
Right? It's like using, you have a generator or something, but you have to use gas to fund the generator, power the generator essentially. And if that runs out, then you basically have no power anyway.
So that would go to why we don't cook food either, because at a certain temperature, once you cook the food, all those enzymes are destroyed.
Yeah.
And then you change the structure of a lot of whatever's in there too, especially microwaving. Microwaving
kills almost all the enzymes.
It definitely kills all the enzymes, but it also rearranges the molecules of the food, so it's actually not what it originally was.
Yeah,
So
after
your body doesn't
taking
recognize it.
yeah.
So then maybe that's a good transition maybe to the idea of raw eating. Now a lot of people adopt raw eating as a strict, like that's all they do, and it's to someone who's grown up on eating processed food and cooked food and everything, it might seem like the most out there thing. But when you understand the idea of enzymes and that all raw food is living food and that the enzymes are present, even stuff that you pluck from the ground, I know the enzymes start to disappear like right away, but that eating it raw still gives you like the maximum amount of nutrients and the capability of processing those nutrients via the enzymes. So is that maybe why that people who promote like, raw living, raw juice drinking have such a low incident rate of disease?
I would say that probably attributes to it. It's part of it's a lifestyle, right? Once you start to get into, you're already into yourself a little bit. You're into feeling good. It's part of your lifestyle. You've recognized our whole system is designed at not looking at your lifestyle. Don't change your lifestyle. Your lifestyle is fine. Just keep on feeding what we're feeding you. And so you have to grab a hold of your lifestyle and say, okay, a Vitamix is a lifestyle change. It's a $600 blender, but you're doing it because you're going to use it.
Yeah.
It's not an appliance that sits there, right? You got to
use it every day
because you're going to use it. It's something that you use, and it's part of your lifestyle. So, and food becomes a big part of your lifestyle.
It becomes a passion.
Absolutely. Well, like when we started doing raw food when my son was born. That was about 7 years ago now. So when we got about 6 months into eating raw food, we'd gone through ups and downs. We didn't know you're supposed to sprout it or soak your seeds and do all that stuff. So at the beginning of that whole thing, it was we'll get on.
We're going to pause for a quick break and talk a little bit about the impact of living food and what it has on you as an individual, how it affects people around you, your kids, your families. So stick around. We'll be right back with Remedy Radio, communicating solutions. Take care. Welcome back, folks, to Remedy Radio. We left off talking about live food versus dead food and how it affects you, and basically how food can impact your life and how it can change your life, how it can change the life of your family and your friends and your relatives. And, Rob was basically leaving off talking about how it changed his life. So, Rob.
Yeah, well, basically we started raw food about 7 years ago. And doing that, we went through the ups and downs of not knowing. So it was completely new to us. We'd heard about it from some people. We'd read some stuff, seen some stuff online. It seemed, it's not that far-fetched. Like we feed our pets kibble, right? Like I have never seen a dog cook anything in its life, right? And so when somebody said, well, your pets should be eating raw food, it was like, well, duh. Like that's a serious no-brainer. Like you don't have to think about that. Like it takes all of your own mental BS and all your conditioning and everything to be able to agree with that, because dogs don't do that. And they might come across a forest fire and there's a bunch of dead burned animals, and they're going to go to town, but whatever. So, so then I just was like, okay, so I'm feeding my pets raw food. Well, why aren't we eating more raw food, right? And so we started to look into that. And it's the same with like being a vegetarian. I don't think people should never eat meat or whatever. I don't care what people do. What I do is research the health aspect of a meat-based diet. And unfortunately, most people eat meat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that's going to kill you. It's just your body can't sustain that kind of a lifestyle. So I don't say don't eat meat. I just say don't eat meat all the time. We don't do that. The diseases that we have today are what we used to be called the royal diseases. And it used to be the people that could afford to eat meat all the time would get diabetes, they would get heart disease, they would get these funky cancers that nobody had ever heard of because everybody else was busting their ass and eating grains and seeds and the meat when they could, because the meat was the king's. If you were out poaching, you were killed for poaching the king's meat, right? So
Yeah.
you didn't get
Got a
it.
claim on all the
You
deer
know,
on this
so-
land. Yeah.
Right. And so, so it comes to me, it was just a logical choice. Okay. So, the biggest bonus was that my amazing wife, Reba, uh, agreed to do it. She was on board. And because raw food is a whole new thing, right? Because you're preparing food all the time. There's no cooking anymore. It's all prep. And, we went through trying to make all the raw dishes, like all these lasagnas and all the stuff that you get when you have cooked food, just to try to transition over to eating raw food. But we're at the point now where it's like, carrot sticks and celery sticks and guacamole, and, we eat cheese, we eat raw milk cheese because I did my research and I believe that, there's some benefits to raw milk. Others say not, whatever, to each their own, but we eat that and lots of raw food and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But it's way simpler.
It's
So
amazing too. Like every time I go over to Rob's house and Reba's cooking a meal, it's unbelievable.
Cooking a meal, yeah, preparing a meal. Every time
Preparing,
I've
yeah,
eaten
I don't
there,
even say.
I've
See,
always-
it's so part of your conditioning
Yeah.
to say cook a meal, right? And I've been eating, like a lot of raw food.
Hey, good
you know,
looking. What
so-
you got cooking?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like you just got to come up with a new rhymable catchphrase that involves food.
Hey,
prep for
raw
food.
looking. No.
But well, so I'm interested in, obviously this kind of focus on health ties to food, and I'm sure we can talk more about different aspects of health specifically in future episodes. But
Uh-huh.
the idea to me of, when I stopped, when I tried doing the raw and the vegan lifestyle for a while, I found that the thing I didn't miss as much was meat. I found that it was cheese that I would wake up and be like, oh, I gotta get me some cheese. So
Mhm.
why is that? What is it about cheese that makes us so addicted to it?
Adam.
Well, there is a lot to be said about addictions, but specifically cheese, I think it boils down to there are certain aspects of milk, certain parts of milk that are ingrained in our who we are, and that we find very attracting, and that's part of our survival. As children, we have to drink milk. And so these are put into milk to ensure the survival of the next generation.
What's
Right.
put into it?
Certain ingredients, natural ingredients in milk, certain proteins and certain fats that are put
Like
that are.
casein and all that stuff? Or?
To get into the specific details about milk, I mean, is a whole study. I mean, it wouldn't do justice to, what are some
Well,
of the
Yeah, my understanding was that with cheese, the reaction that you have in your brain in terms of dopamine release is the same as heroin, but 1/10 the strength.
Huh.
So that people actually physically can be addicted to cheese, and that nature apparently puts that dynamic into milk, so that as children we'll be drawn to wanting to drink it because it's so nutrient rich, especially the breast milk, as Rob said. So the downside is that those addictive chemicals they leave in the cheese, but then they add all this processed aspect, and then you get addicted to that kind of the taste. You think it's the taste, but it's actually the chemicals that are firing the dopamine. And then they come along with processed cheese, which is missing all the positive benefits of cheese, but still has all the addictive properties. And that's where you find people, going to fast food restaurants and all these things. It's not even so much the meat as it is the cheese that keeps people coming back and develops into these heavy mucus kind of like health problems. Because was it you who told me cheese promotes mucus growth, which is where bacteria?
Well, there's a study done by Dr. T. Colin Campbell that goes into animal-based proteins, and he's a strong advocate of eliminating all animal-based proteins from your diet. But again, it's to each your own, right? It's to find your comfort zone, and by maximizing the potential of your body. If everything's working great, and you're happy in life, then eat a bit of everything, So, but
Well, for me, it went to the whole raw and cooked thing again, right? Dairy is cooked, and they cook milk, and milk.
That's
cow's
what
milk,
pasteurized means, right?
Pasteurized means to cook it, and so the problem with milk is that it's pasteurized. And what happens, they said that they were doing it for our benefit and for our health because of bacterial reasons. Now, the thing with raw milk is that raw milk is full of bacteria. The bacteria that's in raw milk is beneficial in destroying the bacteria that would harm you. So what happens is with raw milk, if you have E. coli or anything like that that's in there, the beneficial bacteria that's already in the milk will destroy the E. coli, and when you drink that, that's fine. You won't get the E. coli. You'll get the beneficial bacteria that's in the milk, plus all the nutrients and minerals and stuff that's in there.
And I heard that E. coli really only manifests in cows that have a corn-based diet as opposed to a grass-fed diet.
I didn't know that exactly. I'm sure I've heard that, but
Food Inc.
Oh, that yeah, that yeah. I did hear that. I just didn't retain.
Well,
that
isn't that where
Cow.
Mad Cow stemmed from? Is the cannibalism of cow?
Yeah, feeding a cow anything other than grass, which is what it's supposed to eat. It's got 6 stomachs for grass. Right?
Yeah, they force feed them corn mixed with a lot of other stuff, and the effect of that is, as you know, people don't really digest corn. You just kind of process it, and it fills you up.
Yeah.
And by forcing these cows to eat the corn, they fatten them up so that they can sell bigger flanks of meat. But the problem is that the corn-based diet is rife with disease, bacteria, and all these things. And that's the difference between free-range grass-eating cows and shredded meat from a big factory of corn-fed fat cows.
Yeah.
Imagine eating 1,000 sad cows in one burger patty, right? If you think of things from a vibrational perspective, as I mentioned before, the vibration of putting love into food. Well, if the reverse is also true, then the tortured souls of all these cows being put into shredded thing. You're eating a burger patty made up of bits and cutlets and all these pieces of these thousands of sad, depressed, tortured souls and low vibrational animals, suffered animals, and then you're putting that into your body, and then you wonder why after you eat a big McDonald's burger you feel like depressed.
Well, that's why I think there's a lot to be said about the addiction aspect of it. Why do you keep going back to fast food chains? Why do you keep eating the same stuff that's causing you, pain? May not be today, may not be tomorrow, but eventually that's catches up to you, right? It's only evident if you are what you eat, and you're eating garbage all day, eventually you're going to turn into garbage. It's plain and simple, right? So how do you cut off the addiction? Well, from myself, my understanding of addiction, the best way to do it is just sever it. Cut it off.
Cold turkey,
rip it off like a Band-Aid. May hurt like a little bit, but that's how I've heard. That's how I've learned to deal with addiction, and it's worked. Like for me, anyway. You stop eating meat, boom, you stop eating meat. I don't eat meat, so it's like, same thing with like smoking. I used to smoke when I was younger, and it's just boom, done.
So it might be a week or two of pain, but
we're gonna be back with it might be a week of pain, but eventually you get over it. So we're going to take a quick break. So thanks for joining us, guys, on Remedy Radio, where communicating solutions is what we do. Paul and Rob, thanks for all of the information you've shared with us, and we're glad that you could stop in and say hello. Thank you, guys.
See you next
Peace.
time.
Take care. Remedy Radio, rocking it.